And welcome in. A very happy Wednesday to you now, January the 10th of 2024. I'm Joe Raineri. This is GameTime Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network, and we've got plenty going on around the sports landscape, including breaking news all week long when it comes to coaching football, especially the NFL. We've gotten bombshell after bombshell, learning a little earlier today that Pete Carroll is hanging it up after what feels like just a forever time there in Seattle, no longer going to be the Seattle Seahawks head coach. We learned 48 hours ago that Mike Vrabel will no longer be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Questions about Bill Belichick still swirling, but in just epic Nick Saban fashion. He upstages all of those headlines by announcing just a few short hours ago that he will be retiring and stepping down as the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. He has decided to retire, and that is maybe not as shocking as some may think it is, given the fact 72 years old. He has won 6 national championships at Alabama. He did have another one at LSU back in 2003. His record, 206-29 straight up, 10 SEC West titles between his stops at LSU and, of course, Alabama. 72 years old. He made the college football playoff in what will now be his final year as the Alabama Tide head coach, but he did lose, of course, to the eventual champion Michigan Wolverines. As we welcome in our radio audience here on this Wednesday, it is Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri, and breaking news regarding the GOAT, greatest maybe of all time there, Nick Saban, has announced earlier today that at 72 years old, he'll be stepping down as the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. There's a lot to unpack here, but I would say that judging from the amount of smiling Nick Saban did this year, we probably should have known something was going on. The man looked entirely too content and happy walking on the sidelines in that loss here in the semifinals to the Michigan Wolverines. But what can you say? It is, and I don't think he's going to be the last one. We'll start with that. I don't think it should come as a surprise that the likes of maybe Nick Saban, and I do think Harbaugh will be next year. National championship, accomplished what he wanted, getting ready to move on. You know, this is the end of an era, not just with Nick Saban retiring, but it's an end of the playoff era with 4 teams. You know, Nick Saban's been around long enough to know when it was just the top 2 teams in the BCS. He's been around for all of it, but with NIL money becoming a reality now and paying players, it is not the same game anymore. We just watched this happen a couple of years ago in college basketball, did we not? We saw Coach K hang it up. We saw, of course, the Villanova coach hang it up. We saw the Kansas coach. We saw some of the all-time greats in college basketball see the writing was on the wall, that the game it's no longer the same. The rules aren't the same. Recruiting, no longer the same. It just now, of course, with a 12-team playoff eventually coming up in a year from now, I think there's going to be maybe a couple of other longtime coaches that decide that, you know what, it's been a great ride, but it is time to move on here. So there are so many questions that remain now with Alabama and who's going to be the next coach. We've got a lot of thoughts on that coming up. We'll talk about this next hour. I mean, guys that we're already hearing, Dan Lanning, Oregon head coach, former Georgia defensive coordinator. How about Kalen DeBoer? You just saw him battle in the national championship against Michigan. Steve Sarkisian, former disciple there of Nick Saban. Mike Norvell, the Florida State head coach, that name also starting to pop up. And then, of course, there's the big one, Dabo Swinney, the Clemson head coach. So, although they're paying him so much at Clemson, I don't know how in the world Alabama, actually, we know how Alabama would afford it, just like they afforded Nick Saban to get him out of the NFL. But there is a lot that we are going to be hearing over the next month, 2 months. Don't forget, recruiting season is already underway. So the fact that he did it as soon as the season was over, Nick Saban, this is obviously not something I think he woke up with and decided that, you know what, that's it, we're going to call it. He's probably gone back and forth with this, and this was going to be his last year, win or lose. Made it to the college football playoff, made it to the semifinal, came up just a little bit short, but really, who can argue with Nick Saban saying, you know what, I'm good. Time to move on. Don't want to work any extra hours here, but I doubt very much we won't be seeing Nick Saban, though, around the college football game, because I do believe there might be a contract somewhere with him doing some sort of analyst work on television. He's already, on every State Farm commercial, I think we have seen him. So I don't think Nick Saban just rides off into the sunset. I think we'll see a lot more of him as the year progresses. But the reality is he won't be on the sideline of Alabama next year. And that is probably going to be the biggest question here. As far as who is it? This is the single highest profile job, I believe, in all of college football. It is also maybe one of the most treacherous jobs in all of college football, given the fact, and it is never easy, you're replacing a legend, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, in Nick Saban. Those are huge shoes to fill. And again, going over the numbers here, guys, I mean, 6 national championships at Alabama. He won one at LSU. The SEC is changing, of course. They've got new teams coming in this year, but to go 206-29 straight up and get 10 SEC West titles, this is an awful lot of pressure on whoever is going to take the job here. But maybe the best stat of all with Nick Saban, in his 17 years with Alabama, the Alabama Crimson Tide, 127, 103-4 against the number. A pretty profitable tenure for sports bettors that back Saban, even with some crazy lines, still got the job done. We'll have much more on this story, much to talk about, of course, in the NFL and that coaching carousel. Maybe Bill Belichick takes over for Nick Saban. No, I'm only kidding. Much more to come to Game Time Decisions, just getting started here on the Grid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
A lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think GameTime Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to GameTime Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than GameTime Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into GameTime Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
And welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network on this Wednesday. We want to thank you so much for making us a part of your evening, as there is no shortage of news stories here that are breaking all day long in the coaching carousel, not only in the NFL, but of course the latest Nick Saban at 72 years old, hanging it up in the college ranks there, no longer retiring, if you can believe that, from the Alabama Crimson side. We'll have much more on that coming up. We also have a full slate of games in the NBA here tonight we're going to get to, not to mention, of course, wild card weekend in the NFL. But we do have coming up top of the hour, not one, not two, but 3 NHL games that'll begin. And who better to talk with than our good friend George Kurtz stepping up here. And Kurt's been a hell of a 48 hours here with stories of who's fired, who's not, direction, who's going to be the next coach of this team or that team. It's kind of nice we don't have this kind of craziness in the NHL. They usually fire everyone within the first week of the season. So this is good. It's a little more stable here tonight, but only 3 games. And one of them is the Philadelphia Flyers, I believe, at home, taking on everyone's favorite, Montreal. But I keep seeing money come in here on Montreal. So what are we doing here with this game here tonight with the Canadiens and the Flyers?
I think that's probably a smart bet tonight, is to go with Montreal here. Now, Philadelphia, come on. Nobody really saw them playing this well this year. And maybe they were all afraid of Tortorella, the head coach. He was doing a magnificent job. He's getting the most out of, I don't want to say the least. That's not fair. There is some talent there. But you look at that roster, you're not like, oh, I wish I was coach of that team. You're not. So Tortorella's doing a great job there. That being said, I think when I checked, it was minus 192 for Philadelphia. No, I'm not laying almost 2-1 with Philly. You're taking Montreal here. Canadians, they may not be a good team, but they're not a bad team either. They're scrappy. They're a scrappy team here. Give me the Canadians. I'll take the plus money.
Yeah, and what's going on with the Flyers, right? What was there? Did I read a story about their draft picks? Like, yeah, I'm not signing with you. Like, I want nothing. In typical Flyer fan, only the Flyers could get a guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm good, man. Look, I don't want nothing to do. And I thought they were having a decent season so far, but I guess all is not well in Philadelphia with the Flyers.
This seemed to be something that we don't know why the player didn't want to play in Philadelphia. He pretty much said, I don't want to play in Philadelphia. And he wouldn't even meet with the owner, the owners, the GM. He wouldn't meet with them, Joe. Meet with them. So they had no choice but to trade. No choice here. Now, they made a pretty good deal, by the way. All right, they got a top defenseman from Anaheim. It is a trade that in the long run could work out for both, but we don't know. They're both young players. They were both top 10 draft picks, so they both have a high pedigree here. But it's just strange here. You don't see this in professional sports. You just don't see where players says, "No, I'm not going here." We've seen like Eli Manning force himself out of San Diego back in the day. He didn't want to play there, but for Clay said, "No, I'm not coming." You just don't see that. We'll see what he does in Anaheim. I'll tell you one thing. I wouldn't want to be out there when he comes back to Philadelphia. They will play in Philadelphia once a year under the current format. Gonna love to see that.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those great storylines the NHL always gives us with malcontents. Talk to me here, Kurtz, about the second game coming up because, Minnesota fires their coach. They go on a really nice run. Everything seemed to be heading in the right direction. Now they've lost 5 of 6. They basically have lost everyone due to injury. And now I believe they've got the rookie in goal here, making the debut for them tonight. What are we doing with this?
I mean, you said the problem here, right? I mean, you lose Kaprizov. For those who don't know, Kaprizov is a great player. Great. I mean, he's probably a top 12 player in the NHL. He's out. They lost their number one goaltender. Now, they still have Marc-Andre Fleury, but you mentioned he's not playing tonight. I mean, hard to like Minnesota. They have traded without Kaprizov. Zuccarello was out for a while also. He's back now. But you lose Kaprizov. You lose the number one goaltender. Yeah, you're going to have some problems here. I'm on Dallas. I don't like Dallas as much as I would have. Heiskanen is out, the top defenseman for that team. And he is really he's not the name you know here. All right, Rupins, Seguin, Pavelski. You go on and on here with their top players here. Heiskanen may not be that name at the top of your mind there, but he is that glue for that team, especially on defense. He's out more week to week than month to month, they say here, but they're going to struggle without him a little bit. So I'm on Dallas. I want to take the over. I just don't know if Minnesota can score goals. I just don't know. All right. Ottinger, by the way, is also out for Dallas. They're number one netminder, but Wedgwood has been fantastic. Fantastic in place of him. So you're not really getting all that much of a downshift from there. I'm on the Wild tonight. I'm on the Stars tonight. And like I said, I'm going to eventually tickle the over here.
Yeah, you wonder if Minnesota, knowing they got the kid in goal, right, they're the future in the net, maybe you get a little bigger effort defensively, too, in this one. And even if you don't get a ton of offense, maybe preventing Dallas over there, the under might not be a bad look here in that one. We also have a late-night game out west here between Vegas and Colorado here, two teams that we scratched our head with over the last month or so, but it's kind of a decent price here for Vegas, again, on the road against the Avs. What are you thinking?
It's a great price for Vegas, right? Now, originally, I thought they were going to have problems in goal, Vegas. Right, we heard that Thompson wasn't going to be able to play. We knew that yesterday because of, I think it's an illness that he's out. So look, they're going to go Peterka against Colorado. Oh, we're going to hammer Colorado and take all the props. And now we're hearing Aiden Hill. Aiden Hill is going to play. Their number one goaltender who's been on the IL for, I'd say, about a month. He's going to play tonight. Always makes me wonder, Joe, is it just a coincidence that you needed a goaltender tonight and the guy who's on the IL is ready to play? Or are you pushing this a little bit? This is probably pushing it a little bit. I don't think they wanted him to play tonight. I'm on Colorado. Even though the good price for Vegas, the problem is Vegas has been playing like crap for about the past 3 weeks to a month. They can't get it all together here. But I think this isn't over. I am much more confident in this over than I am the Dallas-Minnesota over. Colorado, they play high-scoring games, right? They're playing like the Colorado Rockies, right? Coors Field. They're playing wide-open hockey here. Georgiev has not been as good as he was in past. I don't trust Hill tonight either. This smells like a 5-3 game, maybe 6-3 with the empty net here. I like Colorado and the over.
Yeah, and not to mention, Colorado pretty good on home ice too. 17 and 5, I believe, on their home ice this year. And wasn't it them that got absolutely the snot beat out of them 7-0 at T-Mobile, I think, a couple of months ago? So something strikes me as that Colorado team. Yeah, they don't forget beats like that. So this should be a very interesting game here tonight, late night. All right, so you heard the news in the NFL, Kurtz. Seattle looking for a new head coach, and not just a head coach. Pete Carroll, by the way, was the head of the football operation. So this is a whole new era getting ready for Seattle I love the whole he's going to stay on as a consultant. I don't even know what the hell that is, Kurtz. But what do you think? Good thing, bad thing for Seattle?
I think it's a bad thing. I mean, we act like it's so easy to find good head coaches. Right? Our teams act like it's so easy to find good head coaches. I thought Tennessee was out of their mind yesterday for firing Vrabel. I mean, what are we doing here? Mm-hmm. How many teams would love to have a Vrabel, love to have a Pete Carroll? If Carroll didn't want to step down, and it doesn't sound like he did, right? He said today, hey, I'm not burnt out, I'm not tired. So he wanted to coach. He said after the press conference after the game on Sunday that he wanted to coach next year. I think you're out of your mind. I just think teams are out of their mind because we all see these retread head coaches that are terrible. Right, they don't know what they're doing. Carroll knows what he's doing. Vrabel knows what he's doing here. I think part of the problem is here, I think Seattle was, do we keep him? Do we not keep him? Well, you can't wait because other teams are going to be hiring guys that you want to hire. Right? Yep. Like the New England Patriots, they can't wait on Belichick. If you want to get rid of them, you better get rid of them. Those guys that you want to take over for Bill, they're going to be gone. All right, they're going to be either head coach someplace else or on someone else's staff here. So that's why teams aren't waiting. But the bottom line for me is, Joe, when you got a good head coach, you keep the guy. What are the odds of you doing better than Pete Carroll with your next hire?
The grass isn't always greener, Kurtz. Is that what I'm hearing from you, man? The devil you know is better than the devil you don't here, especially in the NFL. Careful what you wish for. Kurtz, best of luck with those NHL plays tonight. CT Bets, Chris Thurston stepping up next here on the grid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6th and the 7th seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles, ridiculous what they did this week.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think GameTime Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to GameTime Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than GameTime Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into GameTime Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Much to get to in the NFL. Headlines left and right, question marks left and right. And, of course, we've got a few games coming up this week, and nobody better to help us cash a few tickets than our good friend Chris Thurston, CT Bets, back in the saddle again, Chris. And what headlines? My goodness, we got coaching changes everywhere. We still have wild card weekend. And, of course, the GOAT retiring there with Nick Saban stepping down at Alabama. Head is spinning here, man. I mean, we were just talking off here. Where does Alabama, who wants this job exactly? You're replacing a GOAT. Good luck with that.
Yeah, going to be really tough to replace Nick Saban. I don't know what direction you're going to go in. You and I were just talking off air with the names that have been thrown out already. It's wild here. Very curious to see what happens in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, don't be shocked, though. I think he's not. He may be the first, but I think the changing of the guard is coming because, well, everything's changing in college athletics. So we saw it in basketball. I think we're going to start seeing it in college football as well. All right, get us going here, man. Congratulations. Obviously, I believe we got a top 5 or 6 finish there in one of the super contests there this season here in the NFL. Kudos, Cashin. Fantastic job. You've been killing it here on the show for us. So let's keep it rolling here and take me to Kansas City, where the Dolphins, half the Dolphins will be there, and the other half, I guess they'll just pluck out of the stands to play because they don't have enough healthy bodies to go here, CT. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Joe, thanks. I finished 6th in the Westgate Super Contest, so NFL was really good to me this year, and we'll go to Wild Card Weekend. And yeah, Joe, the Dolphins, when they gave up that huge punt return on Sunday night, that caused them to lose control of that game, lose the division to the Bills. Joe, their punishment is to travel to Kansas City, play number 15 in the bitter, the horrible freezing cold. It's supposed to be below 0 degrees at Arrowhead Saturday night with the wind chills. Not really ideal conditions to play in for the Finns, especially with, like you said, how banged up they are. The weather's a really gigantic edge for the Chiefs here. They're used to playing in it in the cold, and in fact, the sickos actually enjoy it. And you and I have talked about this all year. The Finns have beat one playoff caliber team this year, and that was against the boys on Christmas. I actually had the boys on Christmas Eve, which really wasn't a convincing win there. The Chiefs, for all the problems they've had this year, still won the AFC West, right? They beat Miami over in Germany earlier in the year. I think the Chiefs match up very well with the Dolphins. And I think the Chiefs D is going to be able to do a pretty decent job at limiting those big plays from Tua and their receivers. You know, Coach Fatso, I think he's going to have a good game plan here to defend his old pal, Tyreek Hill. He's not going to let Tyreek Hill beat him at his house. That's for sure. Look for 15 to be able to move the ball well against a banged up Miami D. Remember, you know, he's not going to have all the explosive weapons, you know, we're used to seeing from that Kansas City team, but he still has Kelsey. He still has Rashid Rice. He still has Pacheco. Nice targets here. We beat the Dolphins on a lot of best bets this year, Joe, when they have to step up in class, and it's been successful for us. So we're not going away from it. A wise man once told me, if it's not broke, don't fix it. KC is one of those teams could flip the switch, Joe. I played on KC -4 here Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely experience matters, and so does, like you said, temperature, because I don't think Tua has won a game over 42 degrees yet. So should be interesting out at Arrowhead there. Maybe, I don't know, what do we do with this game? Are we expecting a shootout of sorts with Green Bay and Dallas, or is it a one-sided affair?
I don't know. I mean, you look at the total, right? It's sitting at 44 now. It's come down. It looked like a sharp group hit the under today, Joe, because I guess there's going to be snow on top of the freezing cold here. So, I mean, this is going to be one of those grinded out games. And we've seen the Chiefs. The Chiefs are used to those games. Miami's used to the, explosive, tossing the ball downfield. Remember, they were calling it the greatest show on turf. I think they're going to be in a lot of trouble here. He doesn't have the targets that he had at the start of the year, and they are not healthy, Joe. They're in some trouble.
No, they are. Well, I mean, heck, Kansas City could probably put 40 on him themselves there with that defense. But what about in Big D? Is that a shootout, or is that going to be a one-sided affair against the Packers?
Yeah, right. Packers, they were really good to us last week on this show. They played good football down the stretch. Jordan Love, he's shown signs of toughness, leading the Packers into the playoffs his first season as a starter. Pretty good job there. And Dallas, for the most part, they've been impressive this season. And it seems like Dak has kind of got the turnovers under control. He's playing like a leader. They've been spectacular at home all season long. That's, everybody knows that. That's no surprise. And for the Packers now, they have to go down south. I think it's going to be very hard for them to move the ball against this Dallas D. They're not going to make it easy for Love to push the ball downfield. He's going to see a ton of pressure. I could see him getting uncomfortable. Might make a few mistakes here. As good as the Packers were last week, Joe, you look at that game, they only put up 17 points. They struggled in the red zone. They were 2 for 4. They missed a field goal. You could tell that they don't trust their field goal kicker. This is something they made that stupid mistake with a couple seconds left in halftime. Cost them points there. Can't get out of bounds. But you're not going to be able to get away with those mistakes versus Dallas. You might be able to get away with them versus the Bears, but Dallas is going to make you pay. And I'm not a huge McCarthy fan, but I do think he's going to have a better game plan here to beat his former team. Dak should be able to carve Joe Barry's D right up. Let's not forget the Packers struggled with a pretty anemic Panthers team just a few weeks ago. They gave up 30 points to the Panthers, for crying out loud. I think Dallas is going to take care of business. They're going to cover the number. So I played on Dallas -7.5. I have no problem laying a little more than a touchdown in this one, Joe.
I will say this about Packers. You found your quarterback. I will be next year looking to back them, depending on in spots here, because I do think the arrows are pointing up for the Packers, but there's levels to this, and right now you're not going on the road and beating the Cowboys. How about Monday and one of the most disgusting games of all time? Philadelphia taking on the Bucks. 3, I think, is what we're seeing here. 43.5, 44. How does anybody trust the Eagle? Can they just flip a light switch and voila, we're back to being the Eagles of old?
I mean, they can, and they have a very good chance to win this game, Joe. And this is a gross one. And they started the year kind of like the majority of last year. They were on fire, and they couldn't have finished any worse. I think they lost 5 of their last 6. They're old, Joe, and they're banged up right now to make it even worse, including the star wideout A.J. Brown and the trigger man Jalen Hurts. They're both playing hurt, and I think the most important part is look at the defensive line. They're out of shape. They have trouble staying out on the field for multiple plays in a row, and they've gotten worn down from the long season prior. And now it's showing towards the end of this year. I don't think there's much gas left in the tank. The Bucks, right? They've been up and down all year long. They haven't been too impressive in the last 2 games. But I think the good news for the Bucks is that the D's been playing much better. They're getting healthier here. And I know the Gulls did take care of business versus the Bucks earlier in the year. They covered as road favorites. They outgained them pretty badly, actually. It was a pretty lopsided game in yardage there. I think this is a new ball game, though. And Baker seemed to have taken this Bucks team over. He's leading the way, kind of like we expected when he first came to the league here. And Gulls defense has been a problem as of late. And I think the home pup and Baker could take advantage of him here. I like the home puppy here, Joe, on Monday night in the standalone game. I played on Baker Mayfield and the Bucks. Give me the 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, good luck covering Mike Evans with that secondary because he torched everybody else this year. So, and that Eagles secondary has been, should be an interesting game there for a Monday nighter. We did also learn, of course, today, besides, then Saban decided to make it all about him. Shocker there. But Pete Carroll no longer going to be the head coach there of Seattle. Listen, I get it. Sometimes a fresh voice is ready to go. He was there forever. A good thing, bad thing for Seattle here, or are you a little bit worried about this move?
I don't know, Joe. I didn't really see anything wrong with Pete. I think, what has he been there, 13, 14 years? He's given them their only Super Bowl, I think, that they ever had. right? And now you're kind of going away from him. I thought he had some nice wins this year. He's got a nice team. I think the problem is here, if you're going to get rid of him, Joe, you get rid of him altogether. There's rumblings that he might be around for the front office still. I think that's a problem. If you're going to get rid of Pete, get rid of him and bring somebody, a brand new face in, get some young blood in there. I don't think that he's going to be able to get along with kind of whoever they bring in here to take over as a successor. So a lot of decisions to be made here left in the NFL, and we're waiting for the big one, Joe, in New England.
Your boy there. What now? Does he leave? And he only leaves unless he wants to leave, correct?
I think the big problem here is, Joe, is that Kraft wants it both ways. He wants to keep Bill and he wants to get rid of Bill. And he can't make up his mind of what he's going to do. That's why, we're sitting here on Wednesday and nothing has happened. It's a real big problem. He's going to have to get some cojones and decide what he's going to do here in the next couple of days, because this is going on too long.
I'll have a conversation with him when I see him at the massage house over there. CT Benz, good luck, brother. Game Time Decisions returns next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's a lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. We've got plenty going on the hardwood tonight, not just in college hoops, but of course the NBA as well. In fact, we got some breaking news out of the NBA earlier today with Kawhi Leonard, not only committed to the Clippers for the remainder of this year, well, he's going to be there for a few more years, signs an extension with the Clippers, 3 years, $152 million. The coach, James Young, he had some thoughts on this earlier today on Coast to Coast.
Steve Ballmer had to run it back with this crew going into that new arena. Now, the best part about this really quick is the length. 3 years. That puts Kawhi at about age 30, I think 35. It would put PG at 36. It would put Harden at 37. If they were to do the same thing, put them all together. So what they've done is they extended them, but not in a place where it's going to crush them at the end of their career.
And we're also learning that Paul George also working on an extension here as he wraps up a big $137 million extension he signed a few years back. Who says there's no money in basketball there? Marcino joining us here. My goodness. I still to this day say the best gig in the world. Forget punter, be the sixth man on an NBA roster, park it on the end of the bench there and collect that $12, $13 million and bye-bye. I don't think there's any easier gig in all of professional sports.
$152 million for a guy who only plays 65% of the regular season. Like, I don't know how he does this. Like, I've never seen anybody get a 35% premium on their salary. Right? I mean, that's the equivalent of you and I only working 3 to 5 days a week and getting the same rate, getting the same salary we have now. Like, Kawhi Leonard has figured out the keys to the kingdom. He's the only guy I know who has to work 65% of the time and still get paid premium dollar.
Yep. And he is their key to bringing a championship to that side of L.A. So should be interesting to see how this all works out in the end. But we got a loaded slate here tonight. Shooter's going to shoot. Dude, you like a lot of games on this card tonight. We're going to start with one in Indiana with the Pacers. It's one thing to lose, your leader in the first half, you rally around it, come back, and then end up beating the Celtics last game. But now, no Tyrese Halliburton, at least for the near future. Laying 8.5 in this one against the Wizards. What are we doing in this one tonight?
All right, Joe, look, the minute Halliburton goes out, you're going to get a depressed line off the bat, right? So we're looking at a lower than expected line against what might be the worst defense I've seen in the past 15 years. I mean, the Washington Wizards are barely an NBA basketball team at this point in time. They're last in the league in defensive efficiency, last in the league in scoring defense, last in the league in field goal percentage defense. So I looked at this and I said, look, I know Halliburton obviously is going to affect the game not being there. In fact, the Pacers have played 3 games without Halliburton this year. They've lost 2 of them. 2 of their losses were to Minnesota and Boston, who are 1 and 2 in defensive efficiency in the league. Washington is not that. They are dead last in defensive efficiency. The one other game they had against Miami, they scored 144 points without him. My theory here is that if the Pacers are going to play without Halliburton, they've got to figure it out, and they've got to figure it out quick. If they don't figure it out early, they're going to struggle for all 4 quarters in this game. So I'm going to lay the 4.5 with the Pacers in the first half here on the fact that Washington's defense is downright terrible, and the Pacers still play with a lot of pace and can score regardless of Halliburton is not there. Washington gives up 63 points per game in the first half this year. Like I said, if the Pacers haven't figured it out in the first quarter, they're not going to figure it out the whole game, and the bet is dead after the first 12 minutes, and I'm willing to accept that. But I think the Pacers have enough offense here to lead by 5 at half, and I'm not even going to worry about what's going to happen in the last 24 minutes of this game in the second half on the chance they might get a backdoor cover. Washington could grab it late. But regardless here, I still think the Pacers are a good offense. They're not as good, obviously, without Halliburton. But let's roll the dice here with Indiana and figure that they could still score against the worst defense in the league and lead by 5 at halftime. I'm minus 4.5 in the first half on Indiana.
So I'm looking at your Hawks here, taking on the Sixers. I'm guessing by the number, probably no Embiid here. But is there anything redeeming worth betting with the Hawks, even if the Sixers don't have Embiid here tonight?
The Hawks are one of the worst cover teams in the league, and they can't even cover a game at home. And you absolutely can never bet the Hawks as a favorite. I do not care if it's only 1 point. You can never bet the Hawks as a favorite. You only bet them as a dog. Look, what you do is take the over, because 80% of Hawks games at home go over the total because they just play no defense whatsoever. It doesn't matter that Embiid's out. Philly is still going to score here. Why even worry about the side? At a minimum, Philly's still going to get to 120 in this thing. And without Embiid, you're going to get another depressed total because he's not in the lineup. So just run with the over here. But you cannot ever bet the Hawks as a favorite, at least not this year.
Don't feel like I can bet the Warriors either. And they need a win here. They're at home taking on the Pelicans. So what do we do?
I mean, Joe, here's the thing. Is this the bottom of the market on Golden State when they're a home dog at this point in this spot? It's starting to feel like it, because I think in general, when Draymond Green gets back in the lineup, you're going to see a little bump, right? I mean, I think that's what generally the public is going to believe, and odds makers are going to believe, that it's going to change things a little bit. So you may be seeing the bottom here. Like, I thought about this game. It was interesting to me. It jumped off the board because they were a home dog, and I'm sitting here going, well, I don't know that we've hit the bottom of the market yet on Golden State. Look, they're just not very good. Like, that's what it boils down to. We spent the first 2 months of the season thinking that the Warriors were going to be the Warriors, and we know that they're not. So I would pass on this game and watch and see what happens, because I think we got a little bit more to go before we hit the bottom.
So college hoops has a few interesting games going on here tonight. One of the games that stuck out to me was in the Big Ten, with Wisconsin taking on Ohio State. And usually what is a watching paint dry pace of a game here, neither of these two teams get to the foul line very much. Neither of these two teams, Ohio State shoots the three better than Wisconsin, but I don't know. I mean, on the road for Wisconsin, is there a team you trust more in this game?
Well, now, you mentioned the three-point shooting for Ohio State. Not only that, they're going to have a huge edge on the glass, and that's something that's really important. I played Ohio State money line. Look, this is the Badgers' first true road game since December 9th at Arizona. In fact, they only played 3 road games this year. December 9th at Arizona, and then the other one was a loss at Providence. The other was a 70-57 win at Michigan State. So when you add in the fact that Ohio State's 27th in the nation in rebounding versus Wisconsin is 217th, and you talk about the offensive rebounding of Ohio State, it's going to have a lot of second chance opportunities. The threes that they have, they're bigger inside. They have a great block rate. Ohio State does here. This is just one of these situations, and we're really running out of these this week, Joe, where we see these big-name schools, these ranked teams who haven't been on the road in over a month, going to their first road game and stepping into conference play and doing so, that you can really take advantage of. I like Ohio State on the money line tonight.
So Big 12 seems to be welcoming their new teams. Not well. Texas beat Cincinnati last night. Welcome Big 12. Baylor smokes BYU. Welcome to the Big 12. I have a feeling same thing's going to happen with Kansas taking on UCF here. But what about a couple of the old dogs here, though? TCU taking on OU. Jamie Dixon and TCU flying under the radar as far as I'm concerned here. Not that I don't love Porter Moser and what he's done with OU, but this is a different, on the road early in conference play. Who do you give the edge to here?
I mean, Joe, it's one thing to have an unranked team favored at home against a ranked team. It's another thing when we're talking 4.5 points. All right, I just gave you that situation where we see these big name, big programs that haven't played a road game in over a month. Do you know when Oklahoma's last true road game was? Last season. Last year. March 10th was their last true road game at Kansas State, a game that they lost. They have not played a true road game in 10 months. Horned Frogs are undefeated at home, 7-0 straight up, 5-2 against the number. Oklahoma went 2-8 straight up in road games last year. The average line for the Horned Frogs at home this year is an insane minus 27.8. So they beat Oklahoma last year at home as a 5-point favorite, 79-52. You're going to get a huge crowd at Schollmeyer Arena for a nationally televised game on ESPN2. TCU plays fast. They'll move the ball. They're 6th in the nation in assists. I'm with you here. I think Oklahoma is a legitimate program. I'm not saying that they're not here. And I expect this game to be a little bit fun, probably a little bit tight with TCU pulling away late here, but I like the Horned Frogs, and I'm willing to lay the 4.5.
So the SEC's got an interesting one here tonight as well, Zin. And listen, not taking anything away from Tennessee, but we got another one of these situations where you're not playing in Knoxville, you're playing in Starksville, and this is a different Mississippi State team than the one you beat twice last year. So how are you approaching this big SEC matchup?
Well, look, I'm already polishing my CLV trophy here in the total in this game. I took under 139. I'm seeing 136s out there. The last 6 matchups between Tennessee and Mississippi State that have not been in Knoxville, so whether it's been in Starkville or a neutral site game, 6 of the last 8 meetings have gone under this number. This year, and you have to go back to last year in SEC play, I should say. Going back to last year, the Bulldogs have been amazing at home. They allowed just 59 points per game at home. Only 2 totals last year were over 139. Only 1 total was over 140. That was against Alabama last year. It was one of the best offenses in the country. The average total that Mississippi State saw at home last year was 131.2. Volunteers have struggled away from home in conference play. They scored 67 points per game last year. Their average totals are 132. We're getting a really high total here with 2 of the best defensive teams in the country who are both, when you talk about defensive efficiency, in the top 20, top 10 rather, in defensive adjusted efficiency this year. 8 of the last 13 games in this series in Starkville stayed under the total. Again, polishing that CLV trophy here. We're going under 139 between Tennessee and Mississippi State.
Yeah, this early in the season, I don't mind in spots like this. Give me the home dog. They're a better version offensively than they were a year ago. Tennessee kind of beat up on them. I'm sure they didn't forget that. So I don't mind looking at some of these short home dogs here in early conference play, that teams that can win outright. It's not a bad look.
No, and again, I think when you start to really get into conference play, this is something that's interesting too about TCU. Excuse me. They're 15-4 against the number in January over the last 3 years at home. And the only thing that's significant about that, I understand players changes, coach change, everything else. But when you start to get into conference play in earnest in the month of January and home court advantage really takes center stage, stuff like that matters. That's why when you get these teams on these long breaks from road games that got to go back on the road and mentally get themselves equipped to play in a different arena where it's not a neutral site crowd, where noise becomes a factor and everything else, it's a different ballgame for some of these teams, and you can try to take advantage.
Yeah, don't look any further than what we saw last night. Houston, crushed on the road. Purdue, crushed on the road to Nebraska. It's a lot. Everyone getting a lot closer to the middle here than the has and have not. So I think it's going to be an outstanding January here, one where we can cash a whole lot of tickets following some of these trends. Mark Zinno, my man, best of luck with these plays here tonight. Shooter's going to shoot, brother. Sounds like you got a loaded card here tonight to cash a few tickets with. Game Time Decisions returns after this.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6th and the 7th seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about 2 franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles, ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think GameTime Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to GameTime Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than GameTime Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into GameTime Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in as we look to close out this very first hour of Game Time Decisions on this Wednesday to SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Still much to get to coming up, including opening tip with the early games here tonight in the NBA as the Timberwolves, who were just in Orlando last night, they're beating down the Orlando Magic. Turns out there was significant weather issues along the East Coast last night, and the Minnesota Timberwolves had all sorts of issues with their plane and their trip to Boston. And from all the quotes that I'm seeing, it did not work out very well. A lot of these guys were not happy, guys that were they were stuck in an airport all night. They couldn't take off. They didn't land there until very, very late today. And some guys, including Mike Conley, aren't playing. So this number has shot up now. We're seeing 9.5. It was 7.5, 8 early this morning. But as news of that delay, and I mean, I feel terrible. Think about it. I mean, imagine being stuck in first class on your own private jumbo jet and not able to take off and have to be stuck sitting in those seats. I mean, it's just, I feel terrible for all of them. I really do. But apparently the market thinks that the Timberwolves are not going to be able to deal. So this thing is up to 9.5. I think it's a little too much. I think Minnesota, looking forward to this game, might keep this thing a little bit closer than the market thinks. That's coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Spurs, Pistons, Kings, Hornets, Wizards, and the Pacers, as we heard Mark Zinno talk about there. Big opportunity in some of these early games to cash a few tickets. And we're going to see if we can't follow along and help you as well. Still more to get to coming up, including Thunder Heat, Sixers, Hawks, Pelicans, Warriors. Come back and join us. A lot to get to here on Game Time Decisions on the Grid. And welcome back in, off and running another hour of Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Hope your week has been a profitable one thus far. If not, plenty of games on tap here tonight. College basketball, great slate. NBA, a really good slate. Just 3 NHL games, but we've already got some plays in there lined up for you. And, of course, we've got plenty of news in the NFL as we get ready for Wild Card Weekend. But just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier on the coaching carousel of the NFL, we learned earlier that Pete Carroll today will be stepping down to take an advisor role with the Seattle Seahawks. And, well, not to be upstaged, Nick Saban, just a couple hours ago, made the announcement that he will be stepping down and retiring. No longer the coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, and our very own Joe Raineri. He had some thoughts on this earlier today on Coast to Coast.
Here's the way I would do it. I would put, if I'm doing a list, Lane, Dan Lanning, Dion, and then I guess it's, if you, Dabo and Sark, I think are right there. I mean, early on, I don't want anybody else. Right now, I wouldn't want. Who else you gonna get? Who else is? I don't want DeBoer. They gotta listen. Whoever you get to coach Alabama, it's not just the X's and O's. They have to handle the pressure. It's almost like coaching in New York, right? We talk about being a quarterback or a coach in the New York area. And the pressure is you win now or out the door. There is no tomorrow at Alabama. They're not expecting you because Nick Saban walks out the door to go 8-4 in the SEC next year. So, you keep that train rolling. It's 11 or 1 or bust.
It's good. Welcome in our radio audience here on Game Time Decisions, the Sports Grid Network. Happy Wednesday. I'm Joe Raineri, and we're talking about the bombshell of an announcement. And it's interesting that none of this leaked out ahead of time, but we are learning that not everything makes it to the Chatty Cathys and the beat reporters that cover these professional teams. As, of course, we learned Pete Carroll earlier today, stepping down out of nowhere to become a consultant to the team, vacating not only the head coaching spot, but also he was the head of football operations, meaning he was the one making decisions as far as what players to fill that roster with. Looks like it's a new era there. And then, of course, as you just heard Joe Raineri earlier today on Coast to Coast talking about the announcement that no more Nick Saban at Alabama, that he is retiring. Now, does that mean it's one of these, he's retiring for about a month until the announcement comes that he's taking another job? I don't think so. I don't believe that he wants anything to do with this new era of college football. I mean, he's 72 years old. The guy's got 6 national championships with Alabama. He had 1 with LSU, 206 and 29 straight up here in the SEC between those two schools. There's not a lot more for Nick Saban, obviously, to accomplish in Alabama. So I just find it interesting that there was no hint of this at all coming out during the season. I don't ever remember hearing anything about this could possibly be it for Nick. And maybe we just take guys like him for granted and say, we just anticipate he will be there forever. And he has been there, it seems like, forever. 17 seasons at Alabama. And in 17 seasons, just keep this in mind, Alabama was an underdog in a game just 13 times. 13 times Alabama was considered an underdog under Nick Saban's tenure in Tuscaloosa. Not going to be easy to replace him. And quite honestly, I'm not sure that if I am some of the names that are being thrown out there, Dan Lanning, Kalen DeBoer, you heard Steve Sarkisian at Texas, Mike Norvell, Florida State. And Dabo Swinney, I think, is a pipe dream. I don't think Dabo has taken over Alabama, though it's been rumored for a while that he was the natural replacement. But Swinney has always been a very vocal opponent of the NIL and player payments, and he doesn't like the transfer portal. So I don't know that that's going to work in Alabama. I think he stays at Clemson. But quite honestly, we know history tells us replacing a GOAT in any way, whether it be a player or a coach, is not the easiest thing. Who wants to be compared to a guy that went 17 years and was an underdog 13 times? I mean, the list is just ridiculous. Now, is Sarkisian going to want to have to be compared to him all the time? I mean, he's at Texas now. He was in the playoff this year. He's got a loaded team coming back with Texas, who, by the way, will be playing in the SEC against Alabama. So some of these names, I get it. It's an easy fit. You can connect the dots, putting some of these coaches with Nick Saban. But the reality is, if I'm Kalen DeBoer, might I think about taking this as the next step? I might, although he's carved himself a pretty good path there in Washington. Not to mention, if I'm Washington and I'm about to compete in the Big Ten, do I really want to go to, Alabama and play in the shadow of Nick Saban and go to the SEC, which is going to be absolutely impossible? I'd rather take my chances playing Indiana. I'd rather take my chances playing Iowa, who we knew can't score. The Big Ten, I think, is a much better path for somebody like Kalen DeBoer and Dan Lanning than having to go and compete in the SEC and live in the shadow of Nick Saban. Now, there are a number of very high-profile assistant coaches throughout this country and programs. That might be the direction Alabama wants to go here, because you can't replace them with a name, and nobody that has a name and is carving their own path at another university is going to want to go and live in Nick Saban's shadow. However, number of very high-profile, candidates who are assistant coaches or DCs are working their way up. I think a young guy might not be a no-name of sorts, might not be a bad path for Alabama to go, but they better hurry up, because recruiting's going on, NIL is going on. It's not easy to replace a legend, but that's exactly what Alabama is going to have to do. So much more to talk about in the NFL coming up, wild card weekend. And now we've got seven jobs available for head coaching in the NFL. What's the best job? What's the worst job? We'll talk about that when Game Time Decisions continues here on the...
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6th and the 7th seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's a lot of fun to do, because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think GameTime Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to GameTime Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than GameTime Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into GameTime Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. And we've got plenty of stories going on here, news for days as Black Monday has come and it has gone in the NFL. And at least 7 now NFL teams will be looking for a new head coach next season. The latest being Pete Carroll, we told you, announced this afternoon that he, in fact, which is kind of an about face because it was our understanding, Pete went on a local radio show there in Seattle, I believe, and talked about, what he needed to do next year and that he was planning on coming back and he had all these plans and, we need to be better coaching. And then all of a sudden, the word came down from the front office that they canceled all the player coach meetings that were set to take place and made the announcement that Pete would be stepping down as the head of football operations as well as the head coach, and that he will stay on in some sort of consultant role, which I'm not a big fan of because it either means you're paying him to go away and you need to justify the check you're about to write him, or you're basically saying, all right, it was a great 14 years here, Pete, but it's time to go. But I do believe that he had just signed an extension, so there is certainly enough money there to maybe make him go, you know what, okay. I mean, Pete also in the 70s, maybe it's time just to for a fresh start here for them. But you have to figure out now, Vrabel was the total shocker. We know that Tennessee, I think that had just as much to do with Vrabel maybe helping the door open up to get thrown out of it as anything, because Vrabel doesn't strike me as a guy that would pull any punches when it comes to what he thinks the direction of the Tennessee franchise needs to go in. But there are some guys here that I think will be unemployed for all of 3 minutes. Vrabel is being one of them here. But we know the Raiders and the Davis family continuing to be a head scratcher here. We know that, well, there's an opening there in Las Vegas. Heck of a town. And quite honestly, not a bad team here in need of a head coach. Not a bad opportunity there. And then, of course, there's the lunatic in Carolina, whose ownership group is just, Tapper is just absolutely out of his mind. And how many times do you think you're going to actually fire head coaches within 6 months to 18 months of hiring them and think that you're ever going to get anybody of quality to come in there and want to take that job? Not to mention, who wants the project that is Bryce Young? So I do think there are some jobs that are very, very appealing. And of course, we're still waiting to hear if Bill Belichick will actually move on from New England or whether Belichick will stick it out one more year. The problem with this is as time moves on here and we don't have an answer and we don't have a decision, the worse it gets. You got to meet with players, those final player meetings. You got to make some decisions about what's going on with the draft. There is a lot that has to be done, which is why a lot of teams don't waste time. They want to, and we already know there's 7 openings as it is. If you don't get into that whole interviewing process sooner rather than later, well, then you may not get the person that you are hoping to get. So the longer it drags on, I think the better chance of the Patriots not doing anything and Belichick continuing to be there. But it's the possibility of an 8th opening when it's all said and done here. But for the 7 we have right now, there's a couple that are very intriguing. I think maybe the most appealing job would have to be the Washington Commanders, simply from the standpoint of they will have more cap space than any other team here. It's basically a clean start, not just for the team, but for whoever that they bring in. I mean, they have a brand new owner who has more money than anybody else in the league, apparently. They're also already made the decision, and you got to love what the Commanders did here, is that they moved on from Ron Rivera. We all knew that was happening. But what they did do is they went from the top, and they're bringing in the former Golden State Warriors GM there, Bob Myers. They're bringing him in, proven winners from the top to kind of fill in the gaps the rest of the way down. I love when teams get it right at the top and then start moving down, as opposed to trying to plug and play guys in the front office that have absolutely no idea. Hiring a coach before you hire a general manager. We've all seen how well that works. But this team's got plenty of money. They've got absolutely enough draft picks. Number 2 pick was gifted to them down the stretch because other teams like, Arizona and New England kept winning games. So they ended up getting the number 2 pick gift wrapped to them. So they'll be able to go and get a quarterback, whether it be Caleb Williams, Drake May. We know Taylor Heineke is not going to be the answer. We also, or anybody in the free agency, the old Taylor Heineke, but we know Sam Howell is not going to be the answer for them. So where do you look? Jacoby Brissett, probably a decent backup here, but I do think the Washington job will be very appealing for somebody who is not in this win now mindset. And I do think if a guy like Belichick becomes available, or if Pete Carroll wants to coach someplace else, they're not going to go and start from scratch with Washington. I think you would get maybe a guy like Vrabel that would be interested if you gave him the keys to the franchise and gave him some time to put together the kind of team he wants. I mean, this is a blank slate for the most part, having all of the draft capital, having the 2nd pick in the draft, and a very quarterback-heavy draft. So a lot can be done with this team. I think it is by far one of the best jobs available, and I think the Chargers are right behind them. You don't have to worry about the quarterback. You have one. In fact, the argument can be made that you have wasted a number of years of Justin Herbert's prime trying to figure out and get the coaching hire right. Imagine what this might have been if instead of making decision on Staley, that maybe you went out and got Brian Dable. This would be a totally different conversation. But it's not like they don't have the pieces there. And now, so when somebody like Harbaugh, his name is brought up, it makes sense. I don't think Harbaugh is going to come in here into a situation where he's going to want to build it up like he did at Michigan, right? I think he wants to go in there. This is a perfect spot for Harbaugh, West Coast, California. You're in LA, you're with the Chargers, and you have a franchise quarterback, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. This is ripe for somebody like Harbaugh. I don't think the Falcons are a bad opportunity because of the ridiculous amount of talent that they have. They just need a coach to be able to utilize it and put people in a spot to be successful. Don't have a quarterback. We know this. But you can go out and get somebody like a Kirk Cousins, a Ryan Tannehill, somebody for that stopgap. Draft a young quarterback that you can actually evolve with, and you'll be good to go. Too much talent on that Atlanta team to be passed up here. And then I think you just go down the list from there. Tennessee, Seattle, Carolina, they're all kind of in that, you're going to be doing a lot of patchwork, a lot of duct tape and Elmer's glue on those teams before you can truly turn it into a contender. But there are 7 jobs available, and there's only a limited amount of them in the world. So they will be coveted. And maybe the biggest name hasn't dropped yet, but maybe, just maybe, there'll be 8 teams looking for a new coach. Time will tell. All right, we'll have more on this week's games coming up as Game Time Decisions returns on the grid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about 2 franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's a lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Plenty going on here tonight, and actually this week, in fact, not just, of course, with Wild Card Weekend. We've got the NFL playoffs coming up, but we've got plenty of college hoops, plenty of NBA, plenty of NHL, and let us not forget, you got the Sony Open in Hawaii coming in, and nobody better to talk golf with than our good friend Brady Cannon stepping in here. And Brady, love this time of year for the PGA Tour, getting back into the full swing of things here. It should be an awful lot of fun. And this is another one of these very interesting tournaments, given the fact that there's, a whole lot of guys that have been playing in Hawaii here now get to play again in Hawaii, which is always a fun time here. But how did you approach this Sony Open this season here coming up?
Hey, good to be with you as always, Joe. And yeah, why not spend 2 weeks in Hawaii rather than just one, right? Exactly what you're talking about, though. The guys that have been on the islands for a week prior and gotten acclimated and whatnot to that beautiful island vibe have had great success here at the Sony. In fact, 8 of the last 10 winners have played the Sentry the week before, and 17 out of the last 25. And I went with 6 guys that all played in the Sentry. Now, the thing that's not similar is the golf courses. The golf courses are almost polar opposites of one another. One, Kapalua, big, massive fairways, elevation change, huge greens, par 73. Wailea, little short, flat course with narrow fairways and dog legs. So you would think that a big bomber would win at the Sentry, which we've seen many times, and you'd have a shorter knocker, plotter, ball striker type of guy win at Wailea. Well, Chris Kirk absolutely fits the profile of Wailea and has had 2 runner-up finishes there in his career. He goes and wins the Sentry. Heck, he might go back-to-back. I really think this course is absolutely more set up for him than the Sentry. But I rarely do we see that happen on tour. So Kirk did not make my card, but I could go through all the stats in here and everything with you, Joe, but I know we don't have time for that. I'll just give you the correlated courses. And there's a real strong correlation between success at these other tracks and at Wailea Country Club in Oahu. And that is Harbor Town, where they play the RBC Heritage in Hilton Head, Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Mayakoba down there in the Riviera Maya, where they used to play the Worldwide Technologies, and then also Sea Island in St. Simons Island, Georgia, where they play the RSM. The same guys seem to win all 5 of these events, and that's where I went. I started with Russell Henley. He won at Mayakoba in 2022. He's won the Sony Open before, got him at 20-1. Brian Harmon at 22-1. He's got 2 top 15s, a top 20, and a top 5 at the Sony Open. He's got a second at Mayakoba and a second at Sea Island. Brendan Todd at 45-1. 3 top 20s at the Sony, 3 top 10s at Colonial, a 4th at Harbor Town, a 4th at Sea Island, and a win at Mayakoba. Andrew Putnam at 50-1. He's got a 2nd and a 4th at the Sony, a 3rd at Colonial, a 5th at Mayakoba. You see the pattern here. All these guys do well at these tracks. Adam Svensson at 50-1. I actually hit him in 2022 at 150-1 when he won at Sea Island. That was a big week. He's also finished 7th here at the Sony. I took him at 50-1. And then finally, my longest shot, your defending champion at Colonial, also has 3 top 10s at Mayakoba, and that is the Argentinian Emiliano Grillo. So a 6-pack of golfers here. We have a full field. I only played 4 guys with the shortened field last week, but expanded it out to 6 now with a full field event this week in Oahu.
Going to be a whole lot of fun here. That getting ready to kick off. How come they don't invite us? We should just fly out there, cover it. SportsGrid should send us, right? We can just hang out there for 2 weeks every year. I'm with you, Brady. I think
I put in the request to cover both tournaments. I put you and I in on the request. I was turned down. They flew me back for the Christmas party, but they said Hawaii's off, Brady. We're sorry.
I love it, Brady. Outstanding. We'll work on that, though. I'm going to work on that for sure
Next year.
Next year. The Florida swing. Then when they're in the Florida swing, come down and see us. We got some news this week with the NFL and the coaching carousel, who's available, who's not. We talked about some of these teams coming up, but, let's not forget there are a few teams that remain here where if you're looking, I guess, at any of these coaches you get one of these vacancies, well, they're going to be a little busy for the next couple of weeks here, except for a few teams that may not be busy come next week. So let's start with one of these games here that's going to start Saturday. And I think it's a fascinating matchup between the Browns and Houston because we did see it not too long ago, but we saw it with Case Keenum and we didn't see it with Stroud. So, I mean, what do we do with this? This is a field goal game one way or the other? Or do you think there is some serious value looking at either the Browns or the Texans in this one?
I agree with you, Joe, that this is a really interesting game, and I'm excited to watch this one. I've kind of been a fan of the Texans all season long. I've fallen in love with Stroud. I was a DeMeco Ryans guy when he was the defensive coordinator for San Francisco. You've got probably the best two candidates for Coach of the Year in this game in Stefanski and Ryans. It's a contrast of styles on offense. Houston can run the ball, and they should be able to run it well against a Cleveland defense that is not great against the run, but is excellent against the pass. And then conversely, you have a Houston defense who's not good against the pass, but is really good against the run against a Cleveland team who doesn't rush the football all that well ever since they lost Nick Chubb early in the season. So I think Joe Flacco and company will be able to throw the ball. I think Houston will be able to run the ball. And, I do think we're going to get a close game here. I do believe it is telling that we really haven't seen this number go to 3. I mean, it touched it for a minute, but it really hasn't been there. That tells me that the wise guys, are either waiting for the 3 or they're not real excited about laying it with Cleveland. And I understand that. The Cleveland Browns, first of all, my power ratings came to the Texans favored by 1. And I think a lot of the stats will have, Cleveland a little bit inflated here in the last 3 or 4 weeks because essentially they have played 3 out of their last 4 games at home. I don't count week 18. Other than week 18, they played 3 out of their last 4 games at home. And you and I both know, Joe, not only that defense, but this team altogether is much better at home than they are on the road. Now, you mentioned they beat the Texans on the road. One of those 4 games that they just played was against the Texans in Houston, but no C.J. Stroud in that game. The other thing that I found in the last 6-7 weeks going over my stats is there's really not a team that falls off the map further than the Houston Texans as to the games that they had Stroud versus the games that they did not. Totally different ball club without him in the lineup. So I think you get a really good game here. I played the teaser. I took him up to 8.5. I also took him in a 10-point teaser up to 12.5. So, I'm going to stay away from the traditional spread. I don't want to take 2.5. It's a nice number to lay, but I prefer the Texans side here slightly. I think they have a chance to win it outright, and I feel very good with them in a teaser position.
Yeah, my first inclination that game was expect some points here. I think we're gonna get them too because the Browns defense much better at home than they were on the road this year. So that's going to be a good one. It's also going to be much warmer than what we're going to get in Kansas City with temperatures in the single digits. A lot has been made of it. Tua, of course, I do not believe has won a game over 40 degrees or something crazy like that. This is going to be cold, but cold doesn't mean crazy wind, right? I mean, cold just means that Kansas City is going to be very used to this. Miami, not so much. But what do we get in this here from both of these teams?
Well, this one's kind of interesting. I really do think the elements and the intangibles, if you will, kind of outweigh the numbers here. Both of these teams have struggled. Miami, especially recently, Kansas City more so recently than earlier in the year. My power rating comes to Kansas City minus 3.5. That's pretty much where it opened. I think exactly where it opened. It's ticked up now all the way to 4.5. And I think that's because of what we're talking about here. Not only the elements, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for Tua and the Miami Dolphins to play in that weather. It's hard enough for teams like Kansas City and Pittsburgh that are used to it, but now you send a Florida team up there, I think they are going to really be stressed because of those conditions. And then you throw in all the injuries. I mean, Van Ginkel, the linebacker's now out. Bradley Chubb was out. You've got Jalen Waddle, who's nursing a high ankle sprain. You don't just return from that immediately. Raheem Mostert, is probably going to play in this game. Is he 100%? I think if the Dolphins are going to have a shot at all, Joe, it's got to be the Mostert and Achane show. They have got to run the ball. I think that's the best way to attack this Kansas City defense. Keep Mahomes and company off the field, possess the ball. They were running it down Buffalo's throat last Sunday, and for some reason they abandoned it in the second half. I don't think Tua's going to have a lot of great success throwing the ball in this weather against this defense. It's going to have to be Mostert and Achane for the Dolphins to have a chance. But in the end, I think Kansas City's going to find a way to win it. They might win it by margin, but as far as a play, I'm gonna pair this with the Dallas Cowboys and go money line parlay with Kansas City and Dallas.
Oh, I like it. All right. So we got, let's throw Brady's teaser up there too as well there, Brady. I see Texans, Buffalo down to a pick'em, and Tampa up to 13 here in a 10.3 team teaser. I love all of those plays. What's your favorite out of them?
Well, I would say the one I am least confident in is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles have been awful, but who knows? Maybe Baker Mayfield's really hurt more than we know, but I think they can stay within 13.
And maybe I'm going to Hawaii to cover the golf tournament.
Let's
don't count on that either. Brady Cannon.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's a lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think GameTime Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to GameTime Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than GameTime Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into GameTime Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. Plenty tonight going on the hardwood here, both college basketball and the NBA. Couple of NHL games, a lot of NHL or NFL rather, wild card weekend stories to get to. And the man who will be taking over at the top of the hour in in-game live primetime, Scotty Wetzel stepping in here. And Scotty, let's start with the news of the day. You know, Pete Carroll's like, all right, I'm stepping down. I'm not going to coach Seattle, right? It was the big breaking story this afternoon. And then Saban's like, no. Here, hold my beer. I got this. Saban, a legend, 72, hanging it up. I want to say I'm surprised because we kind of think guys like him just will be there forever. But with the changing landscape of college football here, can you blame him, Scotty?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if Bill Belichick about an hour or so from now said, hey, you know what, I'm stepping down as well, or the Patriots fired Belichick as they all try and one up each other. That would be funny,
Love
right?
it.
So, yeah, I mean, it's
So
true. I
true.
mean, listen, 72 years old, right? I mean, you know, especially, it's kind of weird. If you're 72 and you feel old like 72, you figure, I'll just hang on. Why I got nothing else to do with my life. But if you're 72 and you feel good and you got all the money in the world and you don't want to deal with the headaches of NIL and all the other transfer portal rules and this and that, you just say, what the fudge? You know what? Let me go out on the golf course. I can still get around, enjoy life. No big deal. I've accomplished everything, right? He's won as much as he's won. I don't doubt, though, for a second, Joe, right? Alabama folks, they must have done everything. I mean, everything in their power to keep him. And just say, you know what, Nick, don't coach. You be the figurehead. We'll do everything. We'll get the assistants to do it all. You don't have to do anything except show up on a Saturday just so we can kind of still use you and your name. But obviously he said no. So he wants out. So now who's going to be the next guy in charge? You know, it's not difficult to figure out the top candidates, right? You just go to all the former Alabama players, Dabo Swinney, or his former assistants, Lane Kiffin. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. But which one are they going to really make the offer to? And who wants to step into those shoes, right? I mean,
exactly.
It's a championship or bust. That's a tough spot to be in, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think they're almost better off, you know, maybe one of the up-and-coming assistants that was there with Saban. None of those established guys are going to want to live in his shadow, which is exactly what's going to happen early on, right? Like, why would Sarkisian leave Texas to go be in Nick Saban's shadow when he's going to play in that league there? And if I'm Kalen DeBoer, I want to play in the Big Ten. Do I really want to leave and go to the SEC? Like, I don't think so. I think I got a better shot. Dan Lanning, I got a better shot in the Big Ten, I think, of carving my own path than going to Alabama and to always be compared to Saban. Who the hell wants to do that, Scotty?
Yeah, exactly. You know, if those teams were still in the Pac-12 and it was before this year when everything's all, being thrown up, then I could say, okay, yeah, that's the big time. But they're in the big time now, right? Who wants that headache? I mean, you lose 2 games, you're basically the villain down in Alabama. So
that's correct.
I think it is going to be one of his assistants. Pick one. How about Brian Daboll? Get a guy that's been with us, but is now in a big market, New York, knows the pressure.
Good point.
It seems to be popular enough. I think it's got to be one of those guys, Joe. Not like the Lannings or maybe even a Dabo. Dabo might be the only one because that supposedly was always his dream job. And he's thrown out a couple of flyers this past year in particular about how the media was getting on him and his Clemson team because they were no longer challenging for championships. You remember he got into a little scuffle there with a phone caller during a radio show.
Yep.
Maybe it would be Swinney. Maybe he would be the one. But I don't think the other big guys are going to flip like you talked about.
No, I don't think. I'm kind of with you there. I don't think there's any reason for them here. It's going to be a hot job, and it better be figured out quickly because, the recruiting in the NIL is going on here. What do you think? What's the best job in the NFL available, Scotty? I mean, if you're 7 gigs open, what is it?
It's going to surprise you, Joe, but I actually think it's the Atlanta Falcons. They got an owner that wants to win. He's an older owner. Excuse me, but he does want to win. He's willing to spend money, do whatever is necessary. They got a great, seemingly talent players. The running backs are second to none, right? They got Pitts, the tight end. They got the London, the wide receiver. I don't know what's wrong there except for their quarterback. They have the 8th overall pick. They're in a division which absolutely stinks, right? I mean, Carolina's going to be bad for a long time. Tampa Bay, with the quarterback that they have, what's his face there? I mean, what are the New Orleans Saints? Yeah, Baker Mayfield. I'm drawing a blank here. So that seems to be like actually a halfway decent spot. You don't have Herbert, but you got the 8th overall pick. You can move up a little bit. Especially if you're Bill Belichick, right, who wants to run the football, and that backfield, like I said, is second to none. I can see that would be an attractive for a prospective head coach.
Yeah, I think all that cap money and clean slate and the number 2 pick for Washington is going to be very interesting to see where that goes.
They're in a tough division, though, right? I mean, you got Philadelphia that's going to be good for a long time with Hurts, and you got Dallas, which is going to be good. So that would I don't know if coaches really think about that, but from an outsider standpoint, boy, do you really want to hop into that thing? That versus the New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Carolina Panthers. I'd rather have that division.
Well,
right?
You get the clean slate. It'll be yours to start with. So you get to make the decisions. Number 2 pick, who's your quarterback? Because you're going to have the pick of the litter here. And they have a ton of cap space. But if you're looking for a more established place, it's got to be the Chargers, right? Who's going to grab Herbert? Because I don't think Harbaugh doesn't strike me as wanting to go to Washington and start over from scratch, right? It feels like he's at this point where he'd be much more suited to go into a place that's kind of, put the key in and turnkey and go. And it feels like the Chargers could very well be a heck of a destination for him.
Yeah. And the one thing also about the Chargers, Joe, not that Atlanta's crazy or Carolina's crazy. Washington certainly is, but they don't really have a fan base. Let's face it. He's going from the absolute frying pan of Michigan and winning and all the pressure and everything else that he's been under. And they want to win with LA with the Chargers, but it is the LA Chargers. I mean, the LA Rams don't even have a fan base in LA, let alone the Chargers. He can go winless for the next 2 seasons, and it's not the end of the world. So that also would be a little, I think an attractive thing for him.
You've got a whole bunch of games on a hardwood here tonight. NBA action, a bunch of games underway here. What were you looking at tonight in the association there, Scotty?
I got 2 plays. I do like Oklahoma City laying the 4.5 at Miami. This is one of our favorite little betting systems, Joe. It's an underrated one. It's not heavily popularized, but it's the anti-coaches contract extension system. And laugh that you may, but I'm telling you, following this stuff for years, when coaches get contract extensions, I bet against them the next game. Why? Well, I mean, listen, you don't sign an 8-year, $120 million extension overnight, right? That takes a lot of negotiating. Yes, it's your agent, but you are involved, and you're back and forth, and negotiating, and you finally get to sign your name on a dotted line, and you think you're worried about playing Oklahoma City? You think Eric Spoelstra's really popped up to Oklahoma City, right? I mean, no. He wants to go out and celebrate with his wife and his family. The players don't care. If no one's prodding them, then they don't care. So give me, I know Jimmy Butler anyway, so give me OKC laying the 4.5. And then I know this line's going the wrong way. It's up to 11 now. But I love Toronto plus the 11 at the LA Clippers. After that poor head coach's speech last night, I mean, that was great, right? That was one of, Joe, literally the all-time greatest coaches' rants against officials. We've seen some great rants before, right? I mentioned this on a podcast. But most are against their own team or against a player or players or fans. I mean, rarely do you get a 2-minute. This thing went 2 minutes long of him just killing the official. So they're either going to be anti-Toronto tonight or pro. I think they're going to be pro. So give me Toronto plus the 11. I think they get every break in the world tonight.
Oh, yeah, that was outstanding stuff. Tell us how you really feel. And boy, oh boy, did he tell us how he really felt there. All right, so how about college hoops here? Anything in the college landscape you liked?
You know, I did. One's underway, and it's looking pretty good. I thought this was a fishy line, Joe. Under Tennessee and Mississippi State, 136 and a half it was. You know, you got two of the better defensive teams statistically. Forget about over and under records, because that could be a little misleading, because, you know, if you're a good defensive team, the number's going to be low. So I try and look at the defensive numbers, and it was 136 and a half, you know, and they're on pace for about 50 points now as they're closing out the first half. So it's on an under pace. I like that. And then later on tonight, I like over Washington State and USC, 146 and a half. Trojans are a pretty good over team, so I like the USC at home, due for a monster effort. Haven't played well since LeBron's kid, was healthy enough to join the team and play, but I think they're going to win big tonight and put a lot of points on the board.
Well, that's the whole thing with them. They are definitely an over machine. How about on the ice? There was only 3 games here, Scotty, tonight. Did you look at anything?
Yeah, like Philadelphia. Under Philadelphia, 6.5 against Montreal. Well, the Flyers are just an under machine. You know, every once in a while, they'll come up with this weird 6-5 score. You wonder how that happened. But everything else is 4-1, 3-1, 3-2. You know, Montreal can give up a bunch of goals, but that's not what Philadelphia wants to do. So I do like the under 6.5. You got to lay a little juice around 125, 130 or so, depending on where you do your shopping. But it's well worth it. I don't think these two teams get to 7 goals. So I like under Flyers and Canadians.
And what's your favorite play of the wild card weekend, Scotty? What are you looking at here?
I hate to say it, Joe, but the Dolphins are going to get killed. They're going to get killed. It's just what a disappointment. As a Dolphin fan, I feel, I don't know why the line's only 4. I really don't. I guess because Kansas City's offense has been so bad, but is a guy from Hawaii who could only put, 14 points on the board against the same Kansas City team earlier this year in perfect conditions over in Europe. He's going to go down into sub-0 degree temperatures, not be able to throw the football more than 10 yards down the field with 2 injured wide receivers, and they're going to be competitive in this game, Joe. I just don't see it. I don't know what I'm missing, but I think Kansas City wins this in the 28-7, 24-7, 30-7 range. I don't even think it's going to be close. I really don't.
Going to be a whooping. That's what it's going to be there this weekend in suboptimal temperatures for sure here. So interesting games here tonight. Of course, Scotty will have you covered coming up here at the top of the hour. Plenty of NBA action all night. Plenty of college hoops too, Scotty. You'll keep an eye on those NHL games. And, of course, sometime before the night's over, somebody else will get fired, I'm sure, and you'll have that as well. Enjoy the game. Scotty will wrap it up next year on The Grid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
San Francisco minus 120 to win the NFC Championship. It's the Cowboys with the second best number. The Eagles at 7-1.
What the hell's the difference between the 6 and the 7 seed? I need my guys healthy here to make a playoff push. They took the bye week and still won the football game. You want to talk about two franchises going in the wrong direction? The Eagles. Ridiculous what they did this week.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's a lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Bills going on the road to Miami Gardens, knocking off the Dolphins as 3-point favorites. They win it 21-14.
You want to lose like the Falcons did today, 48-17? That's probably bothersome. You want to win an ugly game where you throw 3 picks, but you end up winning the division? No one cares. Ain't nobody going to be talking about interceptions in the end zone tomorrow. You know what they're talking about? Hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend in the playoffs.
Football Full Circle, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think GameTime Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to GameTime Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than GameTime Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into GameTime Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in as we look to close out this edition of Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you hanging with us here, but much more to get to here tonight. Underway in the action in the association here is the Celtics and Timberwolves. Boy, this is getting to be a good one here so far. About 3 minutes left in the first half. We've got a 46-44 game going on right now. Celtics up by a bucket right now. You've got the Spurs went into this game against the Pistons as a favorite. What? Yep, that's right. You got a 5-win team as a favorite over Detroit, and they're up by 9 right now, 49-40. You got the Kings all over the Hornets, 69-57. Still 2 minutes to go in the first half. And again, that's 69-57 in the first half. We have the Wizards on top of the Pacers, a game that we told you we were going to be very interested to see here. No Halliburton, not exactly the same Pacers offense without him. 44-43, Wizards on top there, 2.5 to go. And the Miami Heat jumped out in front of the Thunder, 26-21 at home in there. SGA, 9 points, 1 board, 1 assist in that one. And the Hawks and the Sixers underway in the first, 26-24, Atlanta on top there. Much more action coming up here in with not only the NBA, but don't forget, of course, college hoops underway right now. And it looks like a little Big East action we're going to keep an eye on with the Johnnies. St. John's 50, Providence 47 in that game there. That should be very, very interesting watching Rick Pitino and company see if they can get it done. And Kansas welcoming UCF to the Big 12 with a 37-29 lead at the break there. We've got all of these games covered for you here. No need for you to go anyplace else, as in-game live primetime is coming up next here on the SportsGrid Network. We'll see you again tomorrow on Game Time Decisions.